purpose. And I see a lot of people who come to church, who go to church, who think that they can praise God. And they praise God pretty good, given the great presentation. They jump and spit and holler and roll around on the floor, but they have no purpose. They have no purpose. They're dancing with no purpose. They're singing with no purpose. They're shouting with no purpose. They're giving their offering with no purpose. There's no purpose. And whatever you do without purpose really doesn't matter anyway. I'm sorry to tell you that. Because it's all about purpose. I know some hateful folks. I mean some hateful folks that can dance. I know some hateful folks that can dance. I know some evil, corrupt Negroes that can shout, speak in tongues, prophesy, and preach. But they cannot speak to you the moment you walk into the church. Because they don't have purpose. They got gifting and talents and ability. But without purpose, it really doesn't mean anything. Paul then goes over in the New Testament. What Paul says is they sound as cymbals. They sound as cymbals. Just making a lot of noise but have no impact. If you make a lot of noise but you're not impactful, it's frustrating. It's frustrating. I know about this particular frustration because I have some neighbors that every particular weekend they want to play some music. And it's not inviting to me. It's frustrating to me because I'm trying to go to sleep. And I wish they would turn that ding, 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 ding stuff down where only they could hear it, because I don't want to hear it. It sounds good to them, but it's not purposeful for me. I'm not enjoying their intent. I don't enjoy it. It's frustrating. And so that's what God says. God says, he says, it's real frustrating when you have people who make a lot of noise with gifting, but don't have the purpose to understand how to operate in the gifting with the total understanding that God is. And so Paul gives it to us. He says it's through love. It means nothing to be able to prophesy. It means nothing to be able to preach. It means nothing to be able to sing if you don't have love, because love becomes the true antecedent of purpose. If I have purpose, then I've found the love that I have for God. And so when we understand this, that praise can only find its voice. It can only find its voice in purpose. It can only find its context in purpose. And therefore, you cannot use praise to manipulate your own purpose. Because what God says is, I cannot be manipulated by you. Not even if it's a good thing. Not even if it's a good thing. I can't be manipulated by your praise, because praise only aligns itself with my purpose. Praise has to be plugged into purpose if it's going to release the power. Praise that's not plugged into purpose cannot release power. And so we got a whole bunch of church folk in church who can praise God, make a lot of noise, but they cannot produce that they're praising God for, because they're not plugged into the purpose. Now touch somebody and say purpose. God said to David, he said, David, I want to bless you, but the only way to bless you is that you have to follow the design or the purpose that I have for your life. So what God literally did was move some stuff around in David's life. He had to reposition David to set him on the course to be purposeful, to be blessed. And it's funny, it's real funny to me, because when I think about David, David comes from the right gene pool. He comes from the right genealogy. He has the right blood in his veins. He has the right family name. He comes from the right family to be the king of Israel, but there still is a problem with David. Can I tell you what the problem is? The problem is David is the son of Jesse, who is a farmer by occupation. Jesse lives on the backside of the desert. He does not live in the kingdom where the palace is. He doesn't live there. And so what God says is, David, yes, you're going to be king, but the true problem with David is, how do I get from the backside of the desert into the palace that God said I would inherit? That becomes the true problem with 21st century ministry, is that we have people who come to church and they have purpose. Yes, you got purpose. God designed and gave you a purpose, but the real problem is that you're trying to figure out how you get from the desert to the palace. But can I tell you, that was never God's plan for you. It's not for you to try to figure out how you're going to go from the palace or the desert to the palace. That's God's plan. It's God's plan. He never told Abraham Abraham, if you want to be blessed, go outside, follow this roadmap, and you'll enter the place that I want you to be. He never told Israel that Israel, when you leave Egypt, you just got 3 days and you're going to enter the promise. He never told them that. God only says, follow me, follow me, follow me, because that's going to be the purpose. That's going to be the purpose. I'm going to teach you how to follow me when you cannot trace me. I'm going to teach you how to trust me when you can't trace me. I'm going to teach you how to believe me when you do not have belief around you. Because if you believe on me, like the scripture said, out of your belly shall flow rivers of living water. I'm going to put water in the desert. And if you can just follow me, then I'll show you how to survive every desert place in your life. But now here becomes the problem. If you don't follow me in the desert will destroy you. You don't believe me? Let me talk about it. There was a particular individual by the name of Israel, and God delivered her from Egypt. She saw the one enemy that destroyed her whole life, had turned her life upside down. She saw him be destroyed in 1 hour. In 1 hour, she never had to worry about that Negro again. But now the problem is that when God removed Israel out of Egypt, now Israel thinks she knows how to live her life, and she could not provide for her life. So she wanders around the desert for 40 years, going by the same rock, 40 years going by the same cactus, 40 years going by the same tumbleweed, and does not know that she's been here before. That's a problem, because what it says is that I can lose so much time if I don't have purpose. Somebody in here lost some time because purpose was not designated to your life. You didn't see the purpose in where you were, so you allowed time to pass you by. One of the things that I'm constantly having to deal with and constantly having to watch out for, particularly when we talk about this particular generation, is we have to understand that purpose is the only entity that brings promise to pass. That it's the only entity. You have no business being in any relationship with anybody if there's no purpose designed to it. Because people wake up and leave folk after 30 or 40 years, after wasting 30 or 40 years, and then they say to themselves, it just didn't work. Well, baby, you knew that 40 years ago when the Negro didn't have purpose attached to him. It just took you 40 years to recognize it. It took you 40 years to accept it. And what God says is, don't you know that you'll never get them 40 years back? So you better start acting with purpose. You better utilize purpose in your life, because purpose is the only thing that will cause you to enter into the place. And so David understands this. He understands this, and God calls him into a particular place that David himself could not manipulate to get there. He's on the backside of the desert. He's on the backside, not on the front side. Nobody recognizes him. But now what I want to park here and tell you is that anytime God calls you to a particular place, you don't have to kiss up, you don't have to suck up, you don't have to play up, you don't have to do anything to anybody to inherit that God said you would have. The old folks used to say, what God has for you is for you, and what God has for me is for me. I don't have to do anything but be in the will of God to be able to inherit that God has called. I am so sick of folk who run around here promoting themselves. Please put your business card up. Put your resume up. I don't need to see your business card. I don't need to see your resume. If God has commanded and called you to be that you say you are, it's going to happen. And you ain't going to have to do nothing to make it happen. It's just going to happen. When I think about this, I think about that it teaches, God uses this to teach you how to fight particular battles. Because there are some battles in life that you do not have to fight. There are some battles you don't have to fight. And if you're constantly fighting battles in your life and you're getting tired, then what God is saying is maybe you're fighting stuff that you were never supposed to fight. And when you fight stuff that you weren't supposed to fight, you lose energy that you weren't supposed to use. And energy is only transferred, it's not destroyed. So lost energy has to be recovered, but only God can do the recovering. That's the reason why people walk away from people after having spent 50-something years together. It's because they've expended so much energy, and the only thing